Shana Tova Umituka, a sweet year, this coming year of 5,782. It's so wonderful to see you all, really. My heart soars this evening, seeing people I haven't seen in a long time in person, and if you're watching live stream, it's nice to be seen. Looking forward to it opening up even more as things get better. And so my wish for a good and sweet year is, I guess, aiming not quite as aggressively this year. Normally the greeting at this time of year is Gemar Chatima Toma, maybe be inscribed for good in the book of life. And yeah, we want that, but I think we also kind of need a break. So that may be an ongoing theme for this Yamim Norim, these 10 days of awe, beginning tonight with Rosh Hashanah. We will continue our service reading on the bottom half of page 10. All the stars are hidden and the moon is dark tonight. In the wide expanse of heaven, north to south, not a ray of light. Light a bright candle in my heart's shadow tent, and through the wide expanse of heaven the light will shine. Where there is sadness, let us offer love. Where there is fear, let us reach for hope. On this eve of the new year, may we bring light to one another. We light the festival candles on page 11. Ask the Zitron family to come forward to light the candles for Rosh Hashanah for us. There you go. That would help, wouldn't it? Yikes, we forgot the names. We are hoping for some magic.
Like everyone.
Continue on page 16. Here I am, one soul within this prayer community. Like those around me, I bring my own concerns and yearnings to this place, hoping they will find expression in the time-hallowed words of my people and in the traditions cherished by generations before me. May I bring the best of my energies to these holy days, approaching this spiritual work with open heart and mind, sincerity and sustained focus on the deep questions of this season. Who am I? How shall I live? Where have I fallen short or failed? This night I take up the challenge of the days of awe, cheshbon hanefesh, a searching examination of my life, a moral inventory of my deeds, words, and thoughts. During the next 10 days, let me face the truth about myself and listen to your still, small voice, taking comfort in your promise that I am always free to change, released from staleness and routine. Let me know the joy of beginning again. May I gain strength as I share this task with those around me, united by our common purpose. Tikkun midot, improving our characters, and tikkun olam, repairing the world. I now prepare myself to pray, one soul amidst this holy congregation. Hineni, page 17.
ונבחרת מפחד, יושב תהילות ישראל. באתי לעמוד ולחנן לפניך על עמך ישראל, אשר שלחוני. אף על פי שאיני חטאית והגונה לכך, כן אבקש אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל, ואלוהי לאה. אדוני, אדוני הרחום וחנון, אלוהי ישראל. שדוי היום ונורא, יהנה מצליח דרכי, אשר אני הולכת לעמוד ולבקש רחמים, ולבקש רחמים עלי ועל שולחן.
Page 19. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, may we know your blessings in the year 5782. Eternal One, bless us and the whole house of Israel with renewed life, happiness, and peace, comfort and courage, resilience and strength. May the words of our hearts be acceptable to you in the new year that stretches before us. We are forever grateful for the gift of life. Baruch Hu, page 20. Those who wish may rise.
If you are visiting us for the first time or are new to our congregation, we love to sing, and not just us up here. We love it when everybody sings. So we invite you to sing at all times, at will.
Please be seated. Continue on page 23. Bless Adonai, who spins day into dusk. With wisdom watch the dawn gates open. With understanding let time and seasons come and go. With awe perceive the stars in lawful orbit. Morning dawns, evening darkens, darkness and light yielding one to the other, yet each distinguished and unique. Marvel at life. Strive to know its ways. Seek wisdom and truth, the gateways to life's mysteries. Wondrous indeed is the evening twilight. El Chai v'kayam tamidim lo kalenu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, amahari v'aravim. Page 24, love beyond all space and time. Your love enfolds your people, Israel. We receive it in your teaching, your gift of Torah, sacred obligations, discipline, and law. So let us speak these teachings when we lie down and when we rise up, and find joy forever in your Torah and mitzvot. They are the very essence of our life, ours to ponder and study all our days. May we never lose or be unworthy of your love. Ve'avtecha la'tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema, page 26. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta, page 28.
ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו נטות אבות בין עיניך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו נטות אבות בין עיניך. Tom
L'man tizkaru v'asitem eko mitzvotai v'ayetem kadoshim le'elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeti etchem eretz Mitzrayim leot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. On page 34 from Shirat Hayam, the song at the sea in the book of Exodus, it is the song celebrating God's power of redemption, Mi Chamocha. On page 36, Hashki Venu, Let There Be Love.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's sorrows. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Ashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Ashkivenu, understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's sorrows. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. Blessed One, you spread over us a canopy of peace, a shelter of shalom over all Israel, your people over Jerusalem and all humankind. Continue, those who wish may now rise for Chatzi Kaddish on page 40.
Amen. vit nasset, vit adar, vit alev, vit alal, shemein kudusha. Uleila, uleila, min kol berchata, v'shirata.
The Amidah, the standing prayer, begins on page 42 with the meditation and goes through page 70. We will recite it silently this evening, either the words on the page or the meditations in your heart this Erev Rosh Hashanah. And when you've completed the Amidah, you may be seated. Continue with our prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, page 66. the time in our service when we think about those who can't be with us due to illness. Actually, before I asked for names, I'm going to talk about somebody who's here. And thank God. Edie Schifrin, a beloved member of our community, has not been with us for some time and is here tonight, and we're all, our hearts soaring to have you here with us. So maybe our Misha Baruch, our blessings of healing are working. Let's hope so. Anyway, you have a list of names of those who are in need of a blessing of healing, and I'm going to go around there and ask you to call out the names of anybody else you know of who is in need of a blessing of healing, and then we'll recite the prayer together. Ready? Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, Jude. Okay. Misha Baruch. On page 76 is the prayer Avinu Malkeinu, which will be sung in a moment. A couple of comments about Avinu Malkeinu. It is, in a sense, the two aspects of God. God as Avinu, compassionate parent, and Malkeinu as a sovereign, the sovereign of sovereigns, really. And one who we, in some sense, sits in judgment on us, particularly at this time of year. And in a sense, you need the balance of both. We always want the compassionate parent, but also one that will give us guidance and discipline and a way to move about in the world, and a way to function in a way that contributes to the betterment of the world. I'm leaning hard on Avinu this year, given what we've been through in the last year plus, and that we're not quite through it yet. Again, it's what I mentioned earlier when we started the service, that I'm looking to give us all a little bit of a break, and to as we strive to not be perfect in the year to come, but just to do good given the circumstances that we're dealing with right now. So I plant that seed of kavanah, of intention, that we maybe focus a little more on the Avinu than the Malkeinu this year. Avinu Malkeinu, page 76.
Avinu Malkeinu is very frequently consigned to soloists, which in my world means that we're doing the praying and you're doing the spectating, and that this year especially doesn't seem right. So I'm going to invite you to join us on all of the Avinu Malkeinus, but we'll do the high ones, okay?
Avinu Malkeinu, Shabbat Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Alech Osar, Umashim, Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kodkenu, B'Sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu,
So there is a sermon coming, but before I get there, it has not escaped my attention that today is Labor Day. And this isn't going to happen very often, that Rosh Hashanah will coincide with Labor Day, or at least buck up to it on the day of an Erev Rosh Hashanah. And I thought I couldn't let it go by, and I'm going to give you a few reasons and then a short prayer to honor the day. First, a couple of things my father, Zichrona Livracha, of blessed memory, taught me. One, said that all work has dignity, which means all work and all workers should be respected. And he also said there's hardly a better feeling in the world than getting up in the morning and going to a job you love, and there's hardly a worse feeling in the world than getting up in the morning and go to a job you hate. And so it seems that it would behoove all of us to put people in the best position possible that they get to go to a job they love. That's point one. Point two is that Judaism and Jews have a long-standing involvement in the labor movement. Going back to the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire of 1911, which killed 146 mostly Jewish and Italian women. So from Samuel Gompers back in that day to Randy Weingarten in this day, Jews have always been about the aforementioned preserving the dignity of work and of workers. Third is that during this pandemic time, a special recognition of what we call essential workers, frontline healthcare workers, first responders, grocery, service industry workers, teachers, all those who have been out there at some risk doing their jobs. And finally, from an article that I read this morning, that Labor Day in its history is really a celebration of freedom, which intrigued me. Freedom for everyone, as the article says, to accomplish one's ends. This is the pursuit of happiness embodied in our Constitution. So honoring all workers in their struggle to live lives of their own choosing with a degree of financial security. And that seems to be the goal and the purpose of Labor Day. So with that, I offer the following prayer. For those whose labors have been unrewarded and those whose rewards do not match their labors, may we bind to each other on this day and all days. May we refine our hearing and unwrap our own righteousness toward the work of justice for all people, and with the knowledge that fairness requires not only working for the benefit of all people, but giving of our lives in such a way that all people benefit from us. Lead us not into the narrowness of our struggle, but into the wider call of people everywhere, so that the promise of a better world is made real by attentive and willing human beings, who know not only the value of their life, but the sanctity of every life, to the protection and progression of us all. So now the sermon. It has been my custom on Erev Rosh Hashanah to first offer apologies as we do enter into this time of teshuvah, of repentance. It's not where atonement or repentance ends, but an apology is certainly where it begins. And so I first offer an apology to my beautiful bride, Faye. Home is where all the stress comes out. So it tries not to come out here. So as the Talmud says, kal v'homer, so much the more so during a pandemic. To my congregation Kol Ami family, I apologize for not staying as connected as I would have liked to have or should have during the pandemic, and we'll try to do better in the year to come. Also apologize in that my long-standing challenge has been my difficulty in putting names with faces or not recognizing faces. And I know that this is a terrible characteristic for a rabbi. And this comes, I'm kind of hedging my bet here, and I know this is inappropriate because when the worst apology is, I'm sorry if you took what I said the wrong way. That's a lousy apology, and so you really shouldn't hedge your bet. But I learned this year that not recognizing faces is a name condition. Let me see if I can pronounce it correctly. Prosopagnosia, also known as face blindness. I am thinking without an official diagnosis that I may have it. So with an apology comes a gentle request for a little slack in this regard. And if I look blankly as you come up to me, like you should know me, feel free to reintroduce yourself time and time again. So, I always like to do somewhat of a state of the congregation at some point during Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur observance. And this year it seemed like a natural to talk about my involvement as a fellow in the National Rabbinic Program, the Clergy Leadership Incubator, also known as CLI or CLE, and how our congregation can and should be a part of that 2-year project. I will give it some time this evening and how we can all be engaged in this process of truly transformative synagogue work. And yet, only addressing the process of CLI seems at best like a premature step. And setting out that process for transforming our synagogue into something unique seems more of a question of how, a how-to question. And before we can understand how we become who we can be, I think we need to explore in what direction we want to move ourselves, really a why question. Why do we want to be a special kind of spiritual community? And why what we do really matters. Matters to us as Jews or others who are supporting the Jews they love, and why our presence matters in the community beyond the walls, figuratively speaking, the walls of the Kol Ami community. Giving credit and attribution where it is due, a presentation given by Rabbi Jeff Salkin at the community-wide Slichot service got me reoriented toward tonight's topic. It's not so much that the ideas presented are new to our Kol Ami family, but thinking about our most important ideals in terms of why we pursue those ideals resonates much more strongly for me, and I am guessing for most of you as well. As Rabbi Salkin gave his presentation, I thought of my ongoing critique of my Hebrew school education and I think at least some of you were raised on. That, in attending Hebrew school for 2 afternoons a week after my regular school let out, plus Sunday mornings, I learned a lot about how we do our Judaism, how we pray, how we study, how we observe ritual. By contrast, I did not get a lot of why Jewish education, why we pray what we pray, why we observe Jewish rituals, and why we should show care and concern for our fellow Jews and people beyond our Jewish community. Salkin identified the challenge, or crisis if you prefer, in Judaism in relation to Harvard having just appointed as its chaplain a humanistic Jew, Gregory Epstein. By humanistic, I mean someone who has excised God out of the narrative and the conversation. I'll get to God in a discussion more on Yom Kippur morning, a little sneak preview if that tickles your fancy at all. For now, suffice it to say that Salkin's point as it relates to the state of Judaism and organized religion in general in this new year of 5782 is that we as Jews, and more to the point, we as rabbis, need to do different and do better in presenting a Judaism that is meaningful, relevant, and connecting, which for him includes serious discussions about God. Salkin presented two other areas that need our attention and which I'll talk about tonight, and that we should honor as the pathway forward for Judaism to survive and thrive. One, to acknowledge the fear and pain so many are feeling right now, not just the fear of confronting illness and death, but the pain of loneliness and isolation that has been impacted by the pandemic. Salkin's other area of concern is that we need to create Jewish communities where we are living out our most deeply held Jewish values. I recently thought about this element of fear and isolation that has been exacerbated by the pandemic in the context of envisioning our future in the Clergy Leadership Incubator. After all, the point of the 2-year CLI program is to work toward a different, exciting, and meaningful future, to see beyond what is to what can be. When there exists a persistent state of uncertainty as to the immediate future, it's hard to move beyond that. So while envisioning a future involves imagination and creativity, we also desire some level of reasonable certainty that the vision is attainable. Yet that challenge of seeing beyond what is to what can be has been a pervasive part of our Jewish history. One of the hallmarks of Jewish survival has been our ability to hold on to hope amidst times of great challenge, arguably greater challenge than we face right now. After all, the Israeli national anthem is titled Hatikva, Hope. Notwithstanding our history, we're still left with people in our circle who feel a sense of fear and isolation. We have to acknowledge their reality and that we respond with care and concern, that we find a way amidst the isolation to stay connected and to lend a sympathetic ear. I have to say that the job description for a rabbi in the area of individual pastoral care has changed significantly since I was a kid. The expectation of my rabbi growing up was to be a Jewish scholar and to communicate our obligation as Jews and in covenant with God eloquently and with great passion. It did not necessarily include connecting with congregants via one-on-one meetings or fielding questions from individual congregants as to how they should approach their own Jewish journey. The need now of a synagogue community is not just a place for Jews to comfortably gather together, but to create emotionally safe space. I particularly want to acknowledge our newly formed caring committee led by Pat Clinton. As I offer them thanks for how they respond to need and work to keep us connected, I also want to urge you not only to be a part of this important effort in meeting the emotional needs of our community members, but also not to hesitate to reach out to both the caring committee and to me if you feel the need. While I've started reaching out to initiate a round of meetings for anyone who wishes to get together and just catch up, you don't have to wait for me to contact you. I and members of the caring committee are willing and eager to meet with anyone and just talk. Since moving to the Central City in the summer of 2012, I feel Congregation Kol Ami has lived its Jewish values. Living our Jewish values is not just manifested in our social justice work, it is also lived in how we treat each other within our Kol Ami community, honoring and celebrating the diversity of our congregants by defining family in the very broadest sense, striving to be the most LGBTQIA represented synagogue in the city, celebrating our joys together, meeting life's challenges together, and mourning loss together. However, our values are also lived in our social justice work and in who we have designated as our 4 justice partners. Our first and longest of the 4 partners is our relationship with the Urban Community Garden in Mannheim Park. I'm apt to refer to it as the Kol Ami Community Garden, given the instrumental role played by Steve and Linda Sacken in the growth and development of the garden over the last 9 years. However, technically and now as a factual reality, it is the garden of the Mannheim Conservancy, wherein the Sackens still play an essential and instrumental role. It is a place where we have met people not like us, served as a sacred space for mourning a murder that occurred across the street from the garden, welcomed refugees into the garden, and annually put up our Kol Ami Sukkah, opening a door to greater understanding of who we are as Jews. At least in part, as a result of our connection to the garden, we have forged a partnership with the Martin Luther King School. We are working for greater rights for immigrants through the Migrant Farm Workers Assistance Fund, led by longtime immigrant rights activist and social justice leader Suzanne Gladney, one of my heroes. Our fourth justice partner is More Square, the Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equity. With some sense of intention, we have relationships with partners that run on a spectrum from not controversial to organizations that engage in more controversial issues. There should not be anything too controversial in supporting the work of grade school students at Martin Luther King School. More Squared, on the other end of the spectrum, is what advocates or falls on the more controversial issues. Part of the reasoning behind this is that for some, but not for all of our congregants, it is the work of organizations like More Squared that most resonate with our Jewish values. Also, working in more contentious circles is a significant piece of our prophetic tradition. We had a saying at my seminary, if you're not taking a tip from the prophets and annoying your congregants at least some of the time, you're not doing your job. I want to take a moment to talk about how I and we got to this place of being the leading synagogue in the city when it comes to social justice work. First, let me say that while our work may be unique in the city, it is not within the American Jewish community. Truah, the rabbinic call for human rights, Avodah, Ben the Ark, Keshet, representing the queer community, American Jewish World Service, HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, all have been advocating for a more just world for many years on many fronts. As to my own history and life experience, my rabbi growing up, Rabbi Morris Margulies, Zichrona Livracha, blessed memory, consistently gave impassioned and eloquent sermons from the Bima calling out injustice wherever he saw it. This included views that were very unpopular in their days, such as discussing Palestinian rights in the 70s. My father, also of blessed memory, was the only white real estate developer in town who would partner on projects with the Black Economic Union. Growing up, my high school memories include the work of the JCRB, Jewish Community Relations Bureaus, working with Carol Smith and putting together a program during the farm crisis, connecting the Kansas City Jewish community with rural family farmers and supporting them during difficult times. Carol's still doing that work with Missouri Rural Crisis Center and through the Poor People's Campaign. For Kolomi, I think the groundwork for pursuing social justice was already in place when I got here. Our present community garden was an outgrowth of the Kolomi garden in our old building. I think Kolomi was already at the forefront in being a place for Jews from the queer community. As to my own involvement in and passion for the work, let me say a couple of things. First, I have no expectation or requirement that everyone agree with everything I do or like every organization with whom I am involved. No one is given a test here regarding political positions before you get to join Kolomi. And in some ways, it's better if you don't agree. Machloket l'shem shamayim, argument for the sake of heaven. That's a central tenet of Jewish learning. It is how we learn from each other. A caveat is that you need someone on the other side who's willing to disagree with openness and love, something for all of us to keep in mind. Second, I have two guiding principles in Judaism that guide my passion and involvement in pursuing justice. One is that, as it says in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, we are all created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. That means that we interact with others under the assumption that they are deserving of our respect and should be treated with dignity and kindness. That we celebrate what makes us different and not just look for what makes us all alike. This idea of focusing on the universal, those outside of our own community, rather than just the particular, solely focusing on the Jewish community, is a central theme for Rosh Hashanah. This connects us closely to the commandments to both not oppress and to love the stranger, because we as Jews know what it felt like to be strangers. The other foundational Jewish piece is that the God we pray to is ultimately a God of compassion. In our striving to be holy because God is holy, as it is written in Leviticus and Vayikra, we strive to emulate God in leading with compassion. With that in mind, I am always looking for organizations and people who also lead with compassion and advocate for policies that treat people with compassion. And while I'm always open to having my views challenged, the challenge needs to come from a place of compassion, or honestly, I'm not quite so interested. While it should be and is enough of a justification to say that Kolomi works for social justice because it is what we are obligated to do as Jews, there are actually some advantages in regard to the future viability of Kolomi in doing this work. This is where our work ties in to the Clergy Leadership Incubator and setting a future vision for our synagogue community. The founder and still director of the program, Rabbi Sid Schwartz, wrote an article entitled, "Can Social Justice Save the Jewish Soul?" Rabbi Schwartz writes, amongst the following, that social justice is the primary mandate of Judaism. There is no attitude or behavior as universally shared by American Jews as their commitment to the ideals of tolerance, peace, and justice for all people. It is critical to realize how central social justice is to Jewish consciousness. The concern for the stranger, the pursuit of justice and peace, the empathy for the poor, and the commitment to truth and fairness is buried deep in the soul of every Jew. He further writes, "Isn't it obvious that if the Jewish community made social justice a core commitment in the way it spoke and acted in the world, that it would attract tens of thousands of Jews who are otherwise turned off to Jewish affiliations and who spend their time and money on a host of causes and organizations that advance the common good in our society and in our world?" One area in which the topic has relevance is in regard to recent contentious discussions within the Jewish community about Israel. As this is the topic, another sneak preview, for Erev Yom Kippur, I won't get too far into the weeds on this. However, I was shocked to read in a recent poll that indicated that 25% of American Jews regard Israel as an apartheid state. When we hear that, we know we've got some work to do in regard to what Jewish values are represented in our Jewish state. So having spent some time on why we do what we do, let me end with the how, the process by which we'll see our way to a different and meaningful Jewish future. The Clergy Leadership Incubator sets out a process of setting out that Jewish future. While it engages the 19 fellows in the program, that's us rabbis, through some wonderful tools like design thinking and adaptive leadership, I'm still learning all these names, and thank God that I live with Faye, who's an expert in organization design, and she can explain it far better than I. But the most relevant piece is that everyone in our Kolomi community has the opportunity to impact our future. I would add that we will also seek out ideas from people in the community not yet a part of Kolomi, but we hope one day will be a part of the family. Look at it as having access to some of the best, look upon it as this, it's like having access to some of the best consultants on synagogue transformation work in the country without paying top consultant prices. We do all this with an understanding, and recent surveys have shown that while younger Jews still identify strongly with their Judaism, they see a real disconnect between what they see as their Jewish values and the synagogues and other Jewish institutions that do not but should be places where those values can be lived and practiced. We at Kolomi have understood the need to represent a different kind of Jewish spiritual home for a long time. As much as I love the synagogue of my youth, the synagogue of my parents, and my childhood rabbi, for us to survive and thrive, for American Judaism to survive and thrive, we must understand it is now time for change. By embracing change, we are also embracing our Jewish history. Change has never meant abandoning Torah or tradition, yet the impressive hallmark of our survival and our outsized positive impact in the world has been our ability to adopt our tradition to a never-ending world of change. May we as Congregation Kolomi continue to be on the forefront of change for good, to be a place of meaningful connection that meets fear and isolation with care and hope and love, a place where our Jewish values are lived, where we are truly an Or L'Goyim, a light to the nations. It has been my great honor to walk with you on this Jewish journey. May we as Congregation Kolomi continue that journey for many, many years to come. Kain Yehi Ratzon, may that be God's will. Continue our service with Kiddush on page 79. I'll ask everyone to please rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'am v'rumanu mikol ha'shon v'kichanu b'mitzvotav v'titem lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava Yom HaZikaron Hazeh Yom Truah Mikra Kodesh Zeker Litziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol amim U'bracha emet v'kayam lad Baruch atah Adonai Melech al kol ha'aretz Mekadesh Yisrael ve'yom hazikaron Shechianu together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh l'chaim. Continue on page 82 with Aleinu.
Aleinu shabeach ladon hakol
Page 84. Please be seated. Our service continues the bottom half of page 88.
Please join us.
Time to be born, the time to die. today, a time to lose, a time to mend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
As Pete Seeger's Turn, 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 taken from the book of Ecclesiastes, leads us toward Mourner's Kaddish. Hopefully we can get the names posted of those we know, are observing Yortsites, our beloved Edith Compton, mother of Marion Brynan, and Rosalie Rosen, mother of Elizabeth Rosen Keneally. Is there anybody else who's observing a Yortsite this evening? Okay, thanks. Anybody? Okay. Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish, is on page 90. All who wish may rise. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, ve'amad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyamechon uvchayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kari v'imru, Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam l'mei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yidromam v'yitnaseh, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemei de Kudisha, Brich, Leila, Minkol, Brichata, Vishirata, Tush, Bachata, Venekamata, Damiran, Bealma, Vimru, Yehei, Shlama, Rabba, Min Shemaya, Vechaim, Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Vimru, Oseh, Shalom, Bimroma, Hu Yaseh, Shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel, v'imru.
Amen.
May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say,
Amen.
please be seated. As rabbi, I am incredibly blessed to have wonderful lay leadership, people who work endless hours to keep us in community, to create wonderful community and a wonderful spiritual home. And it's my pleasure to call on one of those people right now, our wonderful President, Lynn Began.
Feels good to take the mask off. So, it's good, it's really good to see all of you in person and know that there's many others watching us on live stream. And the sound has been really good at home. I heard about it through text, so yay for this. We live in challenging times, and we need to make difficult decisions to take care of ourselves and honor the Jewish covenant of Pekuach Nefesh, the obligation to save a life, which is more sacred than all of the mitzvot. So thank you for your cooperation and understanding. Last time we were all together in person at the High Holidays, who knew that it would be 2 years before we could be together again, and that we would be together with such restrictions? But here we are, and you all really look beautiful from where I stand. It's great to have you here. I'd like to take a minute to thank several people who have made this hybrid service happen. First of all, thank you to our Rabbi, Doug Alpert, for leading us and teaching us and creating a spiritual path and journey for each of us in our own unique fashion. And to our musicians who bring their talents to create music that touches our souls. To Laura Steinell, our music director, our producer, and our overall menschette or menschela, whatever the feminine is for mensch, that is Laura. She gently reminds us what needs to be done, and we're so thankful about that. To our own Brendan Howard, and to our own Judith Epstein, and to our guest artist, Will Perry, and to Karen Ingebretson, and I've been practicing that with a Swedish accent, Ingebretson, I got it, who is our singer, pianist extraordinaire. Thank you, Karen. Thank you all who work behind the scenes, especially Ray Berger this year, who's the Colamy Vice President, and took care of all the details. And to the Colamy Board of Directors, who had a very serious discussion and decision to make this year about how to do this year. And many thanks to our production team, Mark Gibbons, Dylan Young, Anthony Edwards, and of course, Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons, the senior minister of All Souls UU Church, who always makes us feel so welcome. And thank you to all of you who participated in the service, the Zitrons tonight. And finally, to many of you who are out there, our generous donors and sponsors who have helped us keep the service open to the community and to provide also a live stream option for those that could not attend. And now the pitch. If you have not contributed to support this effort, please think about doing so. You will find envelopes and PayPal QR codes scattered around the sanctuary and on the table in the foyer for your convenience. We appreciate any and all donations and hope that you know that by doing so, you are supporting a unique and frankly extraordinary opportunity for our community to come together. To all of you, both here and at home, may this new year be sweet, healthy, and happy. L'Shana Tova. Thank you.
Everything Wynn said, I absolutely second. Thank you to all those that she thanked. I won't go through the whole list again. The one person I will single out is Laura Steinell, our music director, and we've been partners in crime on this thing. This is our 11th high holiday. I'm grateful for the partnership and all she does for Colamy and makes me look a lot better than I have any right to look. She also, from time to time, will humor me if there's something I like in the way of prayer or song, which is what she has done for our closing tonight. On page 94 is Adon Olam. The wonderful thing about Adon Olam is you can sing it to darn near any tune and it works, up to and including. One day we'll do Auld Lang Syne for New Year's, but somebody other than me will be doing it. But there is a tune
Works
that
really well for Take Me Out to the Bargain.
Yep. And when the Royals are, in first place again, we'll do that again. In the meantime, there is a prayer that doesn't come up in our own Machzor, which is Hymn of Glory, Anim Zmirot, but I like the tune a lot, so that's the tune that gets imposed upon Adon Olam this evening. And you'll catch on. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'et nasa v'chefso kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimlok nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yeh b'tifara v'hu echad ve'ein sheni lahamshil lo lechakbira b'li reshit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz ve'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzur chevli be'etzara v'hu nisi umanosli Manat kosi beyom ekra, beyado avkid ruchi, be'eti shan ve'aira, ve'im ruchi gaviati, Adonai li ve'lo ira, beyado avkid ruchi, be'eti shan ve'aira, v'imruchi gaviati, Adonai li v'lo yiram. Rosh Hashanah morning services, 10:30 tomorrow morning. L'shana tova umituka, a good and sweet year. Shana tova.